Welcome, curious minds, to another deep dive. Today, we're plunging into a concept that might sound a little, well, unconventional at first: fermentation. Now, you
Hmm.
might be thinking of sourdough or maybe fine wine, but we're going far beyond the kitchen or the cellar here. We're going to explore fermentation as a profound alchemical process. It's a truly mysterious paradox, really, where life emerges from what looks like death. We've gathered your sources, articles, research notes, and we're ready to unpack them. Our mission for you today is to pull out the most important nuggets about fermentation, not just as, a biological reaction, but as this deep journey of death, decay, and spiritual resurrection. It's really about how something new, something vital, something truly transformative can emerge from what seems like a total ending, a complete dissolution. And here's where it gets really interesting, because this isn't just theory. It feels like a profound blueprint for personal growth.
Indeed, it really is. And what's truly fascinating here is how the single concept, fermentation, it just threads through so many diverse traditions. You see it in ancient mystical practices, alchemical philosophy, even modern psychology, and definitely the esoteric rituals of Freemasonry. We'll
Yeah.
explore fermentation as this kind of sacred mystery, revealing how decay isn't just an ending, but can actually become the fertile womb, the place for true transformation,
Hmm.
leading to a profound awakening of the spirit within. And this raises a really important question for all of us, I think. What does it truly mean for something to die? For an old self to pass away, so that something greater, maybe something previously unimagined, can actually be born?
That's a powerful way to start. So, okay, let's ground ourselves for just a second with the basics. In a science lab, fermentation is, well, it's a biological process, right? Microorganisms like yeast or bacteria breaking down organic stuff. Think about grape juice becoming wine or dough rising, milk turning into yogurt.
Standard stuff, yeah.
Exactly. It's this natural, essential process of decomposition. It releases gases, enzymes. It literally makes new forms of life and energy. The sources tell us that without it, life would kind of stagnate. It's this primal process, putrefaction, that ultimately gives us spirit, flavor, vitality.
And that scientific picture, it provides such a powerful metaphor for the alchemical side of
Hmm.
things. Because in alchemical and spiritual terms, fermentation signifies something way deeper than just a chemical reaction. It's the breaking down, the putrefaction of the material form, what alchemists sometimes call the prima materia, to allow for the emergence of spiritual life. This isn't just a physical change, it's a really profound transformation of essence itself. Alchemists had this potent, sometimes unsettling image for the start of it, the nigredo within the nigredo.
Negredo within the Negredo. Okay, that sounds incredibly intense. Can you unpack that a bit? Especially for someone who knows Negredo as that first blackening stage.
Sure, yeah. For those familiar with alchemy, the grado is that initial stage, the blackening, the decomposition, when the raw material is broken down. But nigredo within the nigredo, what it suggests an even deeper dissolution, like going further down. It's a dark night within the darkness itself. A profound, often kind of terrifying experience where everything you thought you knew seems to just collapse. Not just once, but maybe twice over. Symbolically, you'd often see things like a black crow or a skull, maybe even a rotting corpse representing this phase, all signifying this deep initial decay and the complete wiping out of the previous form. It's really about stripping away everything superficial or false, getting right down to the bare bones of existence, you could say.
Wow, so it's not just physical change or even just a surface mental shift. It's about the essence changing. That sounds like it could be incredibly challenging, maybe even agonizing.
Precisely. It often is. Carl Jung, the psychologist, who was also a deep student of alchemy, he saw this stage as the very start of true spiritual individuation. And for Jung, individuation is that journey of becoming your most authentic, whole self, right? Realizing your full potential. He saw fermentation as the ego going through this deeper dissolution, this necessary dismantling, really. And that makes space for what he called a numinous presence to arrive.
Numinous.
Yeah, and numinous isn't just something nice or pleasant. It's powerful, awe-inspiring, sometimes even terrifying. It's an experience of something far greater than the personal self, something sacred, profound. It's the emergence of what some traditions might call the divine seed within, or maybe the philosopher's stone in embryonic form.
Okay, like a potential starting to stir.
Exactly. Think of it as the raw potential, the blueprint for your higher self, just starting to wake up from this deep sleep. Not fully formed yet, but it's there, undeniably present, demanding attention. It requires this profound self-emptying, an inward journey where the spiritual self begins to awaken fully, but only by letting go of everything that previously defined it.
That difference between the personal self and this numinous presence really strikes me. So the self-emptying, this decay, it's absolutely critical then. You can't skip it or fake it.
You can't force it, you can't avoid it, and you definitely can't rush it. Fermentation always involves a surrender to decay. Spirit, in this really deep sense, doesn't truly rise until the false self, that ego-driven identity we build on illusions and what society expects, until that completely dies. And if you look at the bigger picture, you find these powerful parallels everywhere in mystical traditions across the globe. Like in mystical Christianity, there's kenosis.
Kenosis, self-emptying.
Yes, exactly. The self-emptying of Christ before the resurrection. It's seen as this voluntary act of letting go of divine attributes to take on human form. It's about releasing what you think you are so you can become what you truly are.
So it's a deliberate act. Profound humility involved, not just passive suffering.
That's a great way to put it. And then in Buddhism, you have the complete letting go of clinging and illusion, recognizing impermanence, releasing attachment to desires, to the ego. This isn't just philosophy. It's about experiencing detachment from the things we mistakenly think define who we are. In Sufi mysticism, it's called fana,
Fauna.
the annihilation of the self and God. Now, annihilation sounds drastic, but it's not about ceasing to exist. It's the dissolution of the separate ego self, merging your individual consciousness into the boundless unity of the divine. All these traditions, in their own language, describe an illumination that's born from radical surrender, a total release of the old to embrace the new.
Okay, let's unpack this a bit more. Given the words you're using, dissolution, decay, annihilation, self-emptying, this really doesn't sound like a particularly elegant or comfortable phase. It sounds incredibly difficult, maybe even terrifying, like you said.
You're absolutely right to pick up on that. It's far from comfortable. This phase is inherently messy, it's unpredictable, and it's profoundly humbling. On the spiritual journey, it often shows up as really intense, disorienting experiences, like a profound loss of identity, maybe a period of deep existential despair, or just overwhelming inner grief over what's being shed. Many seekers hit what some call the dark night of the soul during this time.
Dark night, yeah.
Yet it's precisely in this fertile ground of sorrow, this deep emotional and spiritual composting, that divine inspiration actually takes root.
Yeah.
Like the alchemists famously said, the soil must rot before it can truly bloom. And this death, it's rarely planned. It often comes uninvited. Sometimes as a huge crisis, sometimes as a powerful initiation, but always as this urgent invitation to just surrender. Resisting this death, trying to cling to the old self, well, it means never finding the resurrection, never experiencing the true rebirth that's waiting on the other side.
That's a powerful and maybe a bit sobering thought. And this whole concept, this deep spiritual fermentation, this necessary death before rebirth, has a direct echo in Freemasonry, doesn't it? One of the most well-known esoteric paths.
Absolutely. You could argue there's no phase of alchemical transformation that lines up more closely than fermentation does with the Master Mason degree. Here, the candidate doesn't just learn about death. They undergo a symbolic, ritualistic experience of death and resurrection. It's done through the legend of Hiram Abiff, which is a narrative just packed with esoteric meaning and initiatory power. The whole ritual is designed to be a spiritual fermentation for the person going through it.
That's fascinating. Tell us more about that. What actually happens in this symbolic drama, and how does it specifically mirror this alchemical fermentation process we've been talking about?
Well, in the core ritual, the master builder, Hiram Abiff, he's struck down by unworthy forces. Now, these forces aren't really external enemies. They represent the unruly passions, the base desires, the egoistic and ignorant forces within the self, the things that try to stop spiritual progress. His body is then symbolically buried, hidden from light. The lodge itself is plunged into this profound sorrow. The true word, that divine spark of wisdom, is considered lost. All of this vividly mirrors the putrefaction stage, that dark Negredo phase we discussed. It's that point where everything the initiate has known, believed in, identified with, it all seems to just collapse into darkness and chaos. It's an emotional and spiritual burial, really.
So a complete dismantling of the old structure, the old way of being. But it doesn't end there, right? From this darkness comes light.
Exactly. That's the crucial part. From this profound darkness, this symbolic death, light arises. The recovery of the body, the symbolic raising by the strong grip of the lion's paw, and the revelation of a substitute word. These all represent the rebirth of the soul, but it happens through the death of the lower nature, the ego. As Albert Pike, a really prominent Masonic philosopher, put it, in the death of the master lies the resurrection of the true initiate.
Wow.
So it's not just a play they watch. The candidate is made to experience this symbolic death.
Yeah.
The idea is they receive an inner prompting, a sense of a higher presence, the spirit of life within the newly raised master. It's meant to be a reorientation, a spiritual reawakening from that symbolic tomb.
That process sounds incredibly impactful. So there seems to be this powerful, almost mysterious force at play here, something that activates and guides this transformation. In alchemy, you mentioned it's called the spiritus mundi.
Yes, spiritus mundi. It literally translates as the world soul or world spirit. It's conceived as the divine spirit, or this universal animating principle that's believed to permeate and enliven everything in creation. In the context of alchemical fermentation, this universal presence is thought to descend into the fermenting matter. It brings it to life, transforming the decaying substance into something new and potent. Symbolically, you could think of it as the divine breath entering the soul, but only once the soul has emptied itself of ego and been purified through that suffering. It's like the invisible hand guiding the process, the spark of divine life that's inherent in everything.
And in Freemasonry, or maybe other spiritual traditions, is there a clear parallel to this divine spark or world soul that animates the change?
Oh, absolutely. The Spiritus Mundi could easily be likened to, say, the Holy Spirit in Christianity, or the divine Shekinah in Kabbalah, that idea of the indwelling divine presence. In Masonic symbolism, it often resonates with the image of the blazing star you see on tracing boards or within the lodge. It symbolizes the divine light guiding the initiate.
The blazing star, right?
It represents the unexpected descent of spiritual insight and energy into the heart of the initiate. It's often felt as an awakening or a profound inner illumination. And this divine spark, it isn't something you could produce just through thinking hard or trying really hard. It seems to arrive through grace, through a process of surrender and preparation. Once the vessel, the initiate's soul, is ready and, importantly, emptied. As the esoteric philosopher Manly P. Hall wrote, something like, "The spirit descends only when the soul has been prepared through trial, ordeal, and purification." He said, "The unregenerate man cannot receive the mysteries of the higher worlds." And fermentation is precisely that preparation. It's the crucible that dissolves everything false to make way for the true.
That idea of grace arriving after the preparation, the emptying, that's really compelling. It sounds like this could lead to some pretty profound personal mystical experiences, not just intellectual understanding.
It often does, absolutely. And our sources speak to this directly. Fermentation can indeed bring very vivid dreams, intense visions, and a distinct, often undeniable sense of a greater presence, either within or around the initiate. This isn't seen as hallucination, but maybe as the awakening of the archetypal imagination or opening the eye of the heart, as some traditions put it.
The eye of the heart.
Yeah. In Jungian psychology, this is what's known as the numinous encounter, a direct personal experience when the self, that archetype of wholeness, the true center of the personality, breaks through into conscious awareness. When this happens, the ego isn't running the show anymore. It becomes a servant to this larger divine self. And that encounter evokes awe, reverence. It marks the beginning of real spiritual humility. For the Master Mason, the realization isn't just that death happens, but that it's the very doorway to a higher, more potent life, a spiritual rebirth.
The imagery must be incredibly important during such a profound phase. How is this paradoxical process, life from death, this nigredo within the nigredo, how is it typically shown visually in these traditions?
That's a great question. In both Masonic and alchemical symbolism, you very frequently see the rose and the skull appearing together during this fermentation phase, often in really striking combination.
Rose and skull.
Yeah,
Huh.
the rose, with its layers unfolding, its vibrant beauty, its ephemeral nature, it symbolizes divine unfolding, spiritual beauty, spirit itself, and the promise of immortality. The skull, on the other hand, is the stark, universal symbol of death, mortality, decay, the hard reality of the physical end.
Total opposite, seemingly.
Seemingly. But their conjunction, seeing them together, represents the central paradox of fermentation. Life springs directly from death. The soul blossoms precisely because the ego has died and been transformed. So the initiate, through this journey, carries both images within them, their mortality and their immortality. The skull reminds them of the death that has to be faced, the letting go. And the rose promises the spiritual rebirth, the blossoming that can be attained through that very process. It's like a constant visual reminder of the transformative power hidden within decay.
So, the raising of the Master Mason, it isn't just a symbolic resurrection like a ritual drama. It's meant to be a deeply personal, internal transformation that plants the seed of a new reality inside them.
Exactly. It points to the reality of an eternal seed, buried deep within the heart of every initiate. This seed is sometimes called the lost word in the Masonic tradition, or maybe the divine spark in other mystical paths. It's the divine essence that has to be sought, then nourished through this process of decay and ultimately reborn. The trials and experiences of the Master Mason degree, the descent into the symbolic grave, the feelings of loss and confusion, the surrender, they are, in essence, the ritual composting of the soul. The old is broken down to feed the new growth.
And the result of this intense internal composting is a truly new, elevated self. Someone who carries this eternal seed and has glimpsed the potential of that lost word.
Precisely. When the initiate is finally raised, symbolically, it's not back to their former self. It's to something higher. A reborn person carrying within them a spiritual potency, maybe a profound self-knowledge, and a connection to something greater that they didn't possess in the same way before. This is the real fruit of fermentation. In the language of alchemy, you'd say the ferment has caught the spark. The old wine has truly become the new wine, vibrant and potent. The yeast has awakened, you could say, and the spirit has begun to animate the matter. This is where the light is first truly glimpsed, emerging from the profound darkness of personal transformation.
So wrapping this up a bit, what does this all mean for us, maybe sitting here listening? This deep dive into alchemical fermentation, it seems to reveal the sacred paradox right at the heart of initiation and maybe just personal growth in general, that nothing new can truly grow, nothing genuinely transformative can emerge unless something old, something maybe false, first dies. It's a powerful lesson, maybe a challenging one, in surrender. Not surrender as weakness or giving up, but surrender in profound trust. Trust in the process of life itself. It reminds us that the spirit often comes not to the proud or the self-assured, but maybe to the broken and empty vessel, the one that's made space for something truly divine.
Beautifully put. And in Freemasonry, the third degree really embodies this teaching with unmatched clarity and crucially experiential depth. The symbolic death of the builder becomes the birth of the master, the one who has begun to transcend their lower nature. The word isn't found in just superficial life as we know it. It's revealed through the crucible of symbolic sacrifice and inner work. The Mason who truly undergoes this inner work isn't just a builder of physical things anymore. They start to become the temple itself, animated by the spirit of the living stone, a more integrated, spiritually aware being.
And this is just one stage, right? Not the end of the journey. As we look ahead to the next alchemical stage, distillation, we'll see how that spirit, once it's risen and awakened in fermentation, needs to be purified and elevated even further to reach its highest form. But the true miracle, maybe that profound awakening, it really begins here, doesn't it? In this fertile darkness of fermentation. From the tomb of silence, the voice of light truly begins to rise.
And maybe for you, listening now, consider this. How might allowing for a sacred death in your own life, maybe a complete surrender to transformation, even during times that seem difficult or painful, periods of loss, grief, uncertainty, how might that actually open the door to an unexpected and profound spiritual resurrection? A higher version of yourself? What might be truly waiting to be reborn if you allow the old to truly decay?